it's true I get overwhelmed by a reaction and thought comes in, but that, in many areas, that's the normal procedure for thought to come in. If something shattering happens, and then a moment later you think, what was it, right?
Yes.
Now, in some cases that would be correct, right?
Quite right.
Now, why is it in this case it is not, you see?
Ah, I see what you mean. It's answered. You see, when you meet a rattle on a walk,
yeah,
which I've done very often. You meet a rattler. He rattles and you jump. That is physical, self-protective, intelligent response. That's not fear.
Right. Well, not psychological fear.
Huh?
It has been called a
I know,
kind of fear.
I wouldn't call that psychological fear.
No, it's not psychological fear. It's a simple physical reaction.
Physical
of
reaction,
danger.
Which is an intelligent reaction, not to be bitten by the by the rattler.
Yeah, but at that a moment later, I can say, no, that's a rattler, or it's not a rattler. I may discover it's not a rattler. It's another snake, which is not so dangerous.
No, not so dangerous. Then I pass it by.
But then thought comes in, and it's perfectly all right.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
But here, when I'm angry or frightened,
then thought comes in.
And it's not all right.
It's not all right,
yes.
Because, I see what you're trying to get. Why do I say it's not all right? Because fear is devastating. It blocks one's mind, thought, and all the rest of it. One shrinks in that fear.
Yes, I think, I see that you mean that possibly that when thought comes in, it cannot possibly come in rationally in the midst of fear,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
Is that what you...
I'm trying to
So
say.
in the case of physical danger, it could still come in rationally.
Yes. Here it becomes irrational.
Yeah.
Why I'm asking you, why? Why do why doesn't one clear up all this awful mess?
Well, it isn't clear.
Look, sir.
It isn't.
It is a messy consciousness.
Yeah, it's a messy consciousness.
Messy consciousness. Contradicting.
Yeah.
Frightened. Oh, so many fears and so on. It's a messy consciousness. Now, why can't we clear it up?
Well, it seems we are always trying to clear it up after the fact.
I think the difficulty lies that we don't recognize deeply this messy consciousness is me. And if it is me, I can't do anything. I don't know if you get the point.
You mean we think that there's a me separate from this messy consciousness?
We think we are separate. And therefore we are accustomed, it's our conditioning, to act upon it. But I can't very well do that with all this messy consciousness, which is me. So how am I... Now, the problem then arises, what is action? We are accustomed to act upon the messy consciousness. When there is realization, the fact that I can't act because I'm that.
Then what is action?
That's non-action.
Okay.
That is not okay. That is the total difference.
Yeah, I think I understand. On the one hand, there's the action of consciousness on itself, which just perpetuates things.
Yes.
And seeing that, then it ceases to act.
It's not non-violent. Sorry.
So what you're saying that the normally we have the idea that there's a self which is somehow separate from some of the contents of our messy consciousness.
That's right.
If someone tells us we're wonderful, we don't want to be separate from that. But if we feel afraid and if somebody tells us we're awful, we do want to be separate from that. So it's rather selective. But nevertheless, we do feel there's something in us which is separate from the contents of this messy consciousness. We normally act in such a way as to change either the contents of the consciousness or our relation to them or our relation to the world and so on. But we don't normally examine this apparent separation between the self, the me, and the contents of the messy consciousness. That's something we don't challenge. Now you're suggesting that in fact the separation which we can actually experience and most of us do experience, is in fact something we ought to challenge and look at. And we ought to face the idea that we actually are the messy consciousness and nothing other.
Obvious.
Well, it isn't obvious, it's very non-obvious, and it's a very difficult thing to realize, because one's very much in the habit of thinking one is separate from it.
So is our conditioning, can we move away from our conditioning? Our conditioning is me. And then I act upon that conditioning, separating myself. But if I am that, no action, which is the most positive action.
The way that would be heard, I'm afraid, is that if I don't act on it, it's just going to stay the way it is.
You're suggesting that by recognizing this, there's a sort of the process of recognizing, of facing up to, and of...
It's not facing up. Who is to face up? Not recognize. Who is to recognize it? You see, we're always thinking in those terms. I am that, full stop. We never come to that realization. Totally. There is some part of me which is clear. And that clarity is going to act upon that which is not clear. That's always this goes on.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm saying the whole content of one's consciousness is unclear, messy. There is no part of it that's clear. We think there is a part, which is the observer separating himself from the mess. So the observer is the observed. Good old story.
Right. Well, you were raising the question of action, or if that is the case, how is action to take place?
I say, no. When there is perception of that which is true, that very truth is sufficient, is finished.
Yeah. Well, you've said also, for example, that mess itself realizes its own messiness.
Messiness, it's finished.
But
so, are you suggesting that the realization of the messiness itself in some way dissolves the messiness?
Yes. Not a separative realization that I am messy. The fact is consciousness is messy, full stop. And I can't act upon it. Because previously, acting upon it was a wastage of energy. Because I never solved it. I've struggled, I've taken vows, I've done all kinds of things to resolve this messy stuff. And it has never been cleared. Maybe partially, occasionally.
Well, I think that's another aspect of this. In therapy or in our own lives, we seem to have insights that are partial, that we clear up a particular problem and gain some clarity and order for a time.